Good day. Today we are going to be discussing communication barriers. So first we have the semantic barriers. This is a story that will help you remember what semantic barrier is. So a horticulturist was invited to give a presentation on oncology which he doesn't have any knowledge about. So this is the issue. He doesn't have any knowledge about it. So it looks like he was forced to give this presentation. So his presentations weren't clear. This is also a communication barrier because we have no idea what he's talking about. And then he used a lot of jargons when he was presenting, which also was very disturbing. All these are semantic barriers, are barriers that make us feel bad about the situation. So our knowledge wasn't the same, which made it worse. Imagine having a communication with someone whose knowledge wasn't the same, which language wasn't the same with the other person. That means you won't be able to ask questions, nor would you be able to comprehend what he was trying to explain. He doesn't have any interest in oncology. This is also a semantic barrier. Not having interest in what you're doing, that means you won't be able to understand what the other person is trying to say. If someone is trying to talk to you and he doesn't have interest in something he's trying to say, or you're not having interest in something what someone is trying to say, it's a semantic barrier. He also have difficulty expressing himself, which made it so hard because he couldn't use his grammar and punctuation. So poor grammar and punctuation when having a conversation is a semantic barrier. Also, difficulty in expressing yourself is a semantic barrier. Next is we have the physical barrier. Physical barrier is something that you could feel, you could touch, or you could experience. For example, a noisy situation. If you go to work and then there's too much noise is physical from outside, maybe there's a market nearby, is a physical barrier. So a noisy place is a physical barrier. And when the equipment you're using are outdated or faulty, for example, we all classify that as physical barriers. Next is the time scheduled isn't organized. When you don't have a plan, or when your boss asks you to come every single day when you don't have a break, and he makes you work at night, it's very unorganized, which makes it really hard for you to understand. So all these are physical barriers. And then when you have to go to work every day, when you have a market where intruders could get in at night, which is very unorganized for you, it's all physical barriers. Next is organizational barriers. Organizational barriers are barriers that lead to the organization, that relates to the organization real well. For example, when your organization is really complex, they give you big rules and regulations. They make it really hard for you. Like if the rules and regulations that the manager makes, even the manager could have an organizational barrier. He has to set the rules. He has to make sure he chooses the medium of communication, whether it's online or you can meet him up in the office or you can write mails. Writing the mails could all be organizational barriers. Another organizational barriers is your position in the pharmacy. For example, now that I'm doing this for pharmacy, if you're a cleaner or you're the manager, you all have different rules and regulations. You all have different people looking up to you and what you have to do. So all these are barriers. And when you have information overload, you're the boss and then everyone keeps telling you, oh, I have this problem, what's my job, what am I supposed to do? All this informational load, and then at the same time you want to make sure you satisfy your boss, you go with its rules and you make sure you're perfect, which makes you really scared. So being scared of your boss is also an organizational barrier. The next one is the psychological barrier. This is something related to your emotions. So this is the mnemonic I made for psychological barriers. It's that time of the month where Mrs. Aman is very emotional. So when you put emotions into your job or while communicating, it's a psychological barrier. Unfortunately, Mrs. Grace is back and the clash of personalities have been there for the past years. They're always fighting because they have the same personality. So all these are psychological barriers. Knowing you have to go to work with someone with the same personality as you makes it so hard to work and success. They're very difficult and they hardly adapt to change. So if you're someone who doesn't like change or resists new barriers, new ideas, all these are psychological barriers. And the last one is the cultural barrier. Cultural barrier is the mnemonic is Mrs. Lee and Mrs. Ruth has been quarreling Since Ruth pointed a finger at her. For example, in some cultures, pointing a finger is like you're assaulting someone, or you downgrade someone, or you do not respect or appreciate the person. So all these are cultural barriers. Or some people, they actually need to squat before they could greet other people, and if you don't squat, they feel like you're disrespecting them. So thank you. I hope you understand, and I hope this helped.